This is week one, session one for work-related learning two. So this session is going to serve as a brief introduction to the module, a brief introduction to one of the assignments, and then really, as the title of the presentation suggests, a starting point whereby we need to look forwards to what you have to do for this module, but in order to do that, we've got to look back across what you've already done. You are all now halfway through your foundation degree in applied sport and exercise science. 1 year, 6 modules, 120 credits completed, with varying degrees of success across the group, and individually, varying degrees of success in different modules, different assessment methods. But that therefore means, same again, 6 more modules to do this year, another 120 credits, and what's that, another around about 12 assignments to do. Which doesn't sound too much. As with every module you've done so far, and every module you'll do this year, Work-Related Learning 2 is split with 4 specific module learning outcomes, which we need to work towards and achieve across this coming year. And it is against these module learning outcomes that you will be assessed. We'll mention the first 2 in brief. We're going to really pick those up later down the line, later in the year, with an assignment based around that. And it'll sound a little bit familiar because it really does build upon what you did in Work-Related Learning 1. So outcome 1, based on suitable research, design, based on suitable research, design and present a proposal for an innovative new scheme, product or idea for the sport and physical activity sector. And related to that, outcome 2, evaluate personal performance in the process of researching, developing and presenting the innovative new scheme, product or idea for the sector. So as I said, this really builds upon Work-Related Learning 1, where you looked at the processes of innovation and entrepreneurship. And I think what you had to do in that module was kind of critique already existing innovations. You looked at some innovative products and you talked about the process they went through and how they got there. So this year, you'd be challenged to come up with your own innovative product, something new that could go into the sector and fill a gap, as it were. Now, we'll shelve that for now. The assessment brief is on Schoology, so you can read in a little bit more detail what you need to do, should you wish. But that assessment is coming a bit further down the line, and we'll pick it up in a few weeks' time. Outcomes 3 and 4 then are what we're really going to get started on, and these will run across the whole year. So outcome 3, critically reflect upon the knowledge and skills gained through study on the foundation degree programme and their impact upon future employment opportunities. And outcome 4, evidence and analyse the development of work-related skills, knowledge, experience and qualifications to prepare for future employment. So this is a bit more work-related learning in a traditional fashion, whereby taking action and working towards developing yourself with the specific aim of making you employable by the time you finish this course. Assignment 2, briefly introduced here, available in full on Schoology to have a look at, is therefore the first thing that we really want to start thinking about. The task requires you to put together a reflective account, and an e-portfolio, and it's a long way off. This is due in 20th of May, so right at the end of this year, but there's a lot of action that needs to be taken along the way. So this is a continuous form of assessment that you should be building long term across this year. Now, knowledge from PPD last year, where you had to do a reflective journal, I know a lot of people didn't really stay on top of that. They left it late and did things last minute, and therefore didn't receive the best grades. This assignment, particularly the e-portfolio section of it, will benefit from you building it continually across the year. Okay, specifically gathering the evidence that must be done across the year. So we'll look at those outcomes again and think briefly about the task you're going to have to do. So learning outcome 3, critically reflect upon the knowledge and skills gained through study on the foundation degree and their impact upon future employment. So that's a reflective account. That bit is just a written task. That can be done later in the year because you have to critically reflect on what you've done across the whole year. However, if you don't consider the things that you were doing across the year, you can't really expect to be able to effectively reflect upon them months down the line. So we'll put some sort of framework in place that's going to allow you to reflect upon that as you go. Outcome 4, evidence and analyse the development of work-related skills, knowledge, experience and qualifications to prepare you for future development. And this is a portfolio that you must build across the year. So you must do things that are going to help you for your employment. Some of the activities you do on the course, some of the stuff you do in your modules will inevitably help, and they can be evidence that you can put there. But this is really self-driven, and there's a lot of independent action needs to be required here. Within this module, I'll hopefully guide you and help you map that out. But the emphasis really is on you as individual learners, autonomous learners, to first of all recognise what you need to do to improve yourself personally, and also go out and find those opportunities and take them. All right. Definite challenges to face, particularly at the moment, in terms of how easily accessible those opportunities are. But there's still a wealth of things you can and should be doing to put yourself in the best position to gain employment when you finish your education. Before beginning to plan your own personal development this year, and before looking forward, it's important to look back and reflect upon your journey so far. So that's really our starting point in this module, and that's what the first couple of weeks of the semester are going to be spent doing. Reflecting upon your time on the programme so far, the position that has you in with regards to your employability and your personal skills, and then using that to highlight key gaps that should then allow you to plan effectively actions to take over this year that are going to put you in a much better place if you were to repeat this activity at the end of the year. This is the basic overview then of your course, Foundation Degree in Applied Sport and Exercise Science here at New College Durham. The right hand side of that diagram are the module you'll be studying this year in your second year. So you can see based upon that, you will hopefully be equipped with a whole additional range of knowledge, skills and experiences with which to reflect upon at the end of the year and hopefully help benefit your employability. The left hand side is everything you did last year. So this is what we have to think about for now. These modules, PPD 1, Functional Anatomy, Applied Exercise Fitness Knowledge, Physiology, Nutrition and Work-Related Learning 1. So what you really need to do as a starting point is think about the knowledge, skills and experience that you gained from studying those modules. Okay, some possibly deep reflection there. Knowledge-wise, hopefully you gained a lot. Okay, I'd like to think particularly in the modules that you did with myself, anatomy and physiology, you gained a lot of information. The extent to which you still know that, who knows? You all had enough to pass, but whether that's really still in there is a different matter altogether. So it's worth thinking about those. You can dig in, hopefully you still got them all. Each one of those modules had its own specific module learning outcomes, and that's what your knowledge and understanding should have been based around. In addition to those specific modules and the very specific information included in each one, this course has these overall course objectives. So through studying this program, this is for the full program, the 2 years, this is what we want by the end of it. So we want to provide knowledge and understanding of the scientific factors that underpin performance in sport and exercise settings. And multiple modules will contribute to that. So if I just pick physiology, for example, because that was what I delivered last year, the case study aspect of assessment there really required you to do that. Pick a sport, pick a specific person or specific position within a sport and discuss how the energy systems contribute to performance, how the cardiovascular and respiratory systems contribute. And so you'll have done a similar thing certainly in nutrition, applied exercise fitness knowledge as well. Second on the list there, to develop competence in scientific methods of inquiry and problem-solving abilities. This is something that I believe the second year of the program does a lot more of. Certainly the scientific method in terms of challenging information and solving problems with that is something that is going to be done a little bit more going forward. PBD2 in particular is going to introduce some of that. Third point, develop a reflective approach to theory and practice. Reflection built in various places in the program. So PBD1 in year 1, you definitely have to do reflection as part of that reflective journal. And as I've already mentioned within this presentation, that's something that some people struggled with. I think reflection is tricky. It's a skill to be learned, it's something to be practiced, but it is also a very powerful tool. And it's only through reflection that we can really refine our practice and get better at what we do. So that's going to be an interesting thing, I think. Your reflection is a good thing to reflect upon, how effectively you did it. And one of the big things is that people probably left it way too late to try and reflect upon things that happened much, much earlier in the program. Another thing that people often do, I haven't read your reflections from PBD, by the way, but I'm going to assume that a lot of you just got into storytelling mode, what you did, rather than how what you did impacted upon you, your skills and your success. Again, you'll have to do that this year. This module, for example, the assignment we're really discussing now is about reflection. And what you're going to be asked to do by the end of this presentation is a reflective activity as well. So it's certainly going to be challenged repeatedly this year as to how you can get better at reflection. Number 4 on that list then, develop students' ability to analyse, justify, debate and review ideas, protocols and actions. This is something that should be happening in every assignment to some extent. Our grading criteria, basically, the more that you are able to do these skills, analyse, justify, similar things like evaluate, critique, the higher the grade you are going to get. And considering the grades you achieved last year and your overall average grade may give you an insight into where you stand with some of those skills. And the last one on the list, allow students to apply knowledge and skills within sport and exercise settings. All right, we have some, application within the college. So in some of these modules that you've done, you are asked to apply skills. That's never always the most realistic environments. It's not a real workplace. So it helps you practice and get better. But it's only through real application in the field that you, can refine your knowledge and skills by really using them. Now, something to maybe for you all to think about is the extent to which you have taken up opportunities to do that. So a number of opportunities were presented last year via Simon where people could go along and participate and apply sports science knowledge and protocols to real athletes. Very, very few people took that up. And it's potentially a massively missed opportunity because this year and in the current state of the nation, it's not as easy to go and do that. But that really is an important thing, and being able to apply that. Experience is way more important than knowledge. And thinking about what experience you have so far versus what you will really need when you come to progress to a workplace is a really, really important thing to start thinking about. In addition to the specific modules that we've briefly looked at, in addition to the overall course aims that we talked about in the previous slide, the course also has a number of knowledge and understanding outcomes and a number of core skills. So what we have listed here are the knowledge and understanding outcomes that were planned for people to achieve during level 4. So by finishing your first year of the program, you should have had the opportunity to develop these things and also display these things. So 4.1, key knowledge and understanding is of underlying concepts and principles in sport and exercise science. You should all have that, but to what extent do you think your knowledge and understanding is at an appropriate level? So this is quite generic. You know, you've got anatomical knowledge, you've got physiological knowledge, you've got knowledge of exercise principles and practices, you've got knowledge of nutrition principles and practices based upon the modules you studied. So that everyone's got that, but not everyone's going to be at the same level. 4.2, career opportunities within sport and exercise and how to develop into these roles. See, that was a big factor of work-related learning 1. I believe everyone did a professional discussion for an assessment in which you had researched and looked at career roles, looked at the requirements of those careers, and hopefully did some action planning on how to move forwards with that. And that is really what we're carrying on with in work-related learning too. By the time we get to the task today, we're going to be thinking, and certainly in a couple of weeks down the line, when we get to the next major task, how we are going to develop and further develop so that you can pursue your desired roles within sport and exercise. 4.3, knowledge and understanding the skills and attributes of oneself and understand how to develop skills to meet the requirements of employment. Very, very similar to what we had in 4.2. Once you know the career opportunities, that will tell you which skills, attributes, characteristics are required, and then you can go forth and pursue them and develop them. So that will be, again, a key part of this module. And 4.4, innovation and entrepreneurship and how these are developed and observed in sport and exercise. Again, work-related learning 1 covered that. As alluded to earlier when we looked at the outcomes for this module, innovation in particular is another key factor that we will look at this year when we come to that specific assessment in this module. But again, the level to which you understand innovation and the innovation sort of process and factors involved with entrepreneurship and what you took from last year is probably going to have a big impact on how well you can do on that this year. Following on from those knowledge and understanding outcomes, these are the core skills that were planned to be developed and achieved through the first year of the program. So 4.1, demonstrate skills required to monitor and evaluate human responses to sport, exercise and physical activity. Unfortunately, physiology of human performance was cut short by a couple of months, so we didn't get the chance to do as much practical in that module as we would have liked to. We did some, and we certainly monitored certain outputs like VO2, VCO2, heart rates, but there could have been others as well, blood pressure, etc., and you'll have done a little bit of that in applied exercise fitness knowledge. 4.2, identify and apply concepts, theories and principles in the field of sport and exercise. That's very, very closely aligned to one of the overall course outcomes, so we've already discussed that earlier. 4.3, identify and interpret data and text from a variety of sources. The extent to which you reference your work and the range of sources used in referencing your work is certainly something that really indicates how well you have developed on that core skill 4.3. And that is a key thing that I think when we come to think about it, certainly the task you're going to be directed to at the end of this session, that should play a big part of everyone's thought process. From what I saw, no one's assessments that they wrote last year had a big enough range of sources that they were consulting, and many of you weren't consulting the most appropriate types of academic sources. That is without doubt one of the biggest things that anyone can do that will help them improve the grades they achieve throughout this second year, undertaking a bigger range of reading and improving your skills to use those sources as well. Moving on, 4.4, plan and deliver practical activities using appropriate techniques and procedures. Certainly done during applied exercise fitness knowledge. 4.5, done frequently, produce work independently and with others. So you had a whole range of assessments last year. Some were group assessments, some were individual assessments. I'd like to think that you can very, very easily think about where you excel. If you are better working independently, or if you're better working as part of a group or a team. And hopefully you can start identifying some of the factors as to why that is. So if you don't do so well in a team, why is that? What skills do you need to develop to get better at teamwork? Because moving forward, again this year, there will be independent and group assessments. And when you go into the workplace, it's very rare that you are a truly independent worker and do not have to function as part of a team. 4.6, demonstrate digital literacy skills. This is done frequently by the types of tasks you have to complete and put together for your assessment. It's going to be challenged, or certainly was challenged even more at the end of last year, based upon a shift to distance learning, when we all had to go online and view all our learning materials that way. And again this year, via the blended approach to learning that we are having to take. So hopefully you've got a lot to think about in terms of your digital literacy and where the gaps exist and what you maybe need to improve upon. And the final course skill, 4.7, the ability to communicate effectively both orally and in writing with a range, of individuals and groups. So written work, presentations, group work, whatever it may be, everything relies upon communication, and communication in different styles. So again, hopefully you are able to reflect upon and self-critique your communication and understand which areas you need to improve upon in order to move forward. The previous slides all thought about specific course-based knowledge, understanding, skills, experiences that you've been sort of exposed to across the first year of the program. So we had all the individual modules, we had the overall course objectives that we tried to help everyone achieve, and then the course level knowledge and understanding and course level skills, all of which should hopefully help develop the employability of each and every one of yourselves. But they certainly are not the only things you need to think about in terms of employability. All right, there are a range of generic skills that everybody needs to have. Certainly some of those previous points alluded to those. So things like digital literacy, things like communication, they are much more generic employability skills that regardless of which profession you move into, they are going to be challenged and they're definitely going to be required to at least a minimum standard. There isn't a definitive list of employability skills, but different organisations, different things you read will suggest different areas. So on the following slide, we've got a few ideas about that. This therefore shows you lists taken from 4 different sources about what they classify as some of the most important employability skills. Those generic things that people must have to make them appealing to an employer. Certainly a lot of crossover between them. So straight away, teamwork and communication show up on 3 out of those 4 lists. All right. Other things, problem solving, project management, numeracy, organisation. These are some of the things that show up everywhere. Now, you should be able to take a look at some of these lists and think about how your experiences on the foundation degree so far have challenged them and hopefully helped you to develop those. So if we just look at the list on the top left from prospects.ac.uk, teamwork, working to produce group-based assessments has certainly challenged that. All right. even if it's not an assessment wise, there's been situations in classes, where you have had to work as a group to produce a piece of work or to solve a problem. Okay, problem solving should be coming up frequently. Doing assessments. That is a problem that you have to get by. How are you going to approach it? What research are you going to do that? Communication, I've already mentioned a few times. Communicating orally via presentation. Communicating in a written format as well. Time management, challenged frequently in terms of managing the course, the different modules, the deadlines, your own sporting commitments, your own work commitments, your other life commitments. IT skills in numeracy certainly have to be used. Maybe it's numeracy not as much, but I would argue that in a module like applied exercise fitness knowledge, if you're going to be prescribing exercise to somebody, there's got to be some degree of numeracy. If you are having someone work at 85% of their max for a given lift, you've got to be able to calculate that. The one on that list you may not have come across is customer awareness, but you may have the opportunity to develop that elsewhere in your life, depending on what your employment is, for example. What we would say is that all these skills and all the knowledge and skills and understanding that we've gone through on the previous slides as well, that were specific to the course, they won't all be necessarily required for whichever type of employment you want to go into. So the key thing is thinking about what you have to have versus what might be the nice things to have. The place to go then to really let you know what are the most important skills that you need to equip yourself with and the ones you really need to develop would be specific information about the jobs that you're interested in. So on the screen here, there's some extracts from a job advert which is out at the moment for a performance coaching role. So this is like a strength and conditioning role, sports science role within Crystal Palace's academy. So it lists the essential and desirable skills and qualifications. So essential, educated to postgrad level or equivalent with professional accreditation in terms of a BASIS accreditation, which is sports scientist, ASCC, which is an accredited strength and conditioning coach, or CSCS, which is certified strength and conditioning specialist. So if this is the type of role you wanted to go in, everyone would certainly at the moment say, no, you don't have the essential qualifications. But it's very, very easy to action plan for that. To move towards that, you've got to finish your foundation degree. You've got to do a top-up degree. And then you have to progress on to some sort of postgrad study like a master's. Professional accreditation, something that can be worked towards along the way. The desirable stuff, 3 or more years experience working within a professional sports setting. Tough one to achieve. But this goes back to some of the additional opportunities that are offered in college. The opportunity Simon's had to go and work alongside Durham women's football. They play in the championship level of women's football in the UK. So that is a fairly elite level sport. And going along and working alongside them with that opportunity could be a big deal. Makes a big thing on a CV. All right, played or coached, pretty easy to get, whether you've got it or not. Experience in delivering in both an andragogy and pedagogy level. All right. Simple way of putting that is, have you delivered this type of coaching to both adults and to children? Okay. Again, that lets you identify a gap. You might have experience of coaching with kids, but have never coached with adults. It can be done. Experience of working with GPS systems. Simon's introduced that to everybody last year. Okay, and I've given opportunities at Durham Women to do that further. Passionate about the development of the youth athlete. Tougher one to show on a CV, but if you've cropped up a whole bunch of voluntary hours working with young athletes, that goes a long way to show passion. Advanced computer literacy skills, and we've already talked about postgrad, master's qual in the level. Okay. The additional box on the right hand side, able to build strong relationships with players and staff, passionate about development, and actually repeats itself, not a great advert, able to build strong relationships. So those softer skills, the more generic types of employability stuff that you may need to show that you have. Studying a job advert, whether it's that one or something more relevant that you are more interested in, is really an outstanding tool for you to be able to assess where you are right now in terms of employability. So has everything that you've done on the course so far equipped you yet with the knowledge, experience and skills that you're going to need when you go into employment? I would suggest it'll have helped develop some, but there'll definitely be gaps. All right. Identifying those gaps is then going to help you action plan to the steps you have to take across this year to try and make yourself a better fit for employment at the end. All right. If you don't have a clear idea of the type of employment you want to go to yet, you could do it in a generic fashion. Or my suggestion would be just pick something that does interest you, whether it's what you 100% want to do or not. Okay. And then we'll move forward into a little bit of thinking about how you're going to begin this reflective process about where you are now. I would imagine that you are all somewhat familiar with the SWOT analysis as a tool for analysing your own personal skills, where you are and where you want to move forwards. Everyone's probably done it to some extent. In my experience, from what I've seen students, a SWOT analysis isn't necessarily done particularly well. But we'll try and do it in a little bit more depth. That's normally the key thing that's missing. So, the SWOT analysis, very, very simply put, you start off with a grid such as this. You think about all your strengths, you think about all your weaknesses, the opportunities for you to get better, and the threats being the external things that will stop you getting better, or stop you taking up those opportunities, or stop you achieving what you want to achieve. This is going to be your task for the remainder of this week and for work-related learning next week, is to produce a SWOT analysis on your current skills, experiences and abilities. This should be done with employability in mind, and as I mentioned on the previous slide, ideal if you have got a job role you want to think about in the future, or that you definitely want to try and progress to in the future, I should say. If you haven't got that, you could do it in a generic fashion, or I think the suggestion, which probably makes the most sense and is probably most helpful, would be to do it, to pick a job role of interest and do it with that in mind. Okay. The next few slides, I'm not going to speak over, but they give you some key ideas about what to think about for each section: the strengths section, the weakness section, the opportunities and the threats. I've also put those on a Word document on Schoology, so you can download that and look at it while you're starting to do your SWOT analysis. But I'll just put these things on screen for just a few seconds each. You can pause the video if you wish to have a read through those questions before undertaking your own SWOT analysis. The most important thing to bear in mind when doing your SWOT analysis is it is only effective if you are honest with yourself. If you are unable to critique your own skills and abilities, you're not going to have a very good tool here to help you develop further. All right. Also, and this is looking forward to after we've done, the SWOT analysis, the next step. SWOT analysis is only as effective as the strategies that it produces as a result. So, having identified your current position, the next stage would be to thinking about how to go about planning further development. All right. If you don't do it effectively, SWOT analysis can not only be ineffective, but also be harmful to performance. So a lack of honesty could really be harmful, because it gives people a false sense of confidence about their own abilities, and certainly in thinking about future employment, that's not helpful at all. You don't want to get to that stage super confident that you've got everything you need for a certain job and find out you're nowhere near. So time and effort in a SWOT analysis is really, really important. Your task then, for the remaining time of this work-related learning session, and then also the entirety of next week's work-related learning session, so there's no actual specific delivery next week, it's just for you to work upon this, is to produce a detailed SWOT analysis focused on the knowledge and skills that you've gained so far in the foundation degree and their impact upon your current employability. So you need to think about what you gained from those modules that were mentioned earlier in this presentation. To what extent you've achieved the overall outcomes for the program, whether you've really got those knowledge, understanding and core skills presented for level 4, and how this all matches up with specific employability skills. And this will be more effective, as I've already said a couple of times, if it can be done with a specific job in mind. The key term here is detailed. It's no good if your SWOT analysis is just a list, a bullet pointed list of the things you are good at. Let's start critiquing that. Why are you good at it? How do you know you're good at it? And what's the benefit of that? With the weaknesses, why is it a weakness? Again, how do you know it's a weakness? And what's the negative impact of that weakness? How is that going to prevent you achieving what you need to achieve? Opportunities and threats require a little bit more thought outside the box. Hopefully, the modules you're going to study this year will create a whole lot of additional opportunities that you can include in there. You may also want to think about external opportunities that you can do, other qualifications that you might be able to go on and achieve, or you might need to really go on and achieve. The threats are the barriers that are in your way, all right? The current restrictions put in place by COVID-19 is definitely a threat for some years in terms of achieving career goals, because certain activities just aren't taking place like they were before. Finance might be a threat in terms of achieving additional qualifications. And the big threat for everyone is probably competition. There's a ton of people studying sports science related degrees. They'll all be coming out with them in a couple of years, all going after these same jobs. So it's a hugely competitive marketplace. So that's definitely worth considering. But again, look at the example questions on the SWOT analysis guide posted alongside this video and give it some real thought. The SWOT analysis should then be submitted to myself via your email by 5 p.m. on Thursday, the 24th of September. So that's 1 week today. The following week, so that's the third week of the semester, Thursday, the 1st of October, work-related learning on your timetable will be in the form of individual tutorials. Everyone will get a one-to-one slot, and in that slot we will be discussing your SWOT analysis with some feedback and potentially additional areas that you might want to consider. All right, time to get started.